This program is intended for informational purposes only and does not contain medical advice. As always, please contact your physician or qualified healthcare provider with any questions regarding a medical condition. Hot and Bothered Podcast. Welcome to another episode of Hot and Bothered with Melyssa Ford. I had been chomping at the bit to interview today's guest, and I know I say that all the time, but I mean it. As a matter of fact, let me just address saying that. I hand select every single guest that we have on this show. And I don't do it because they're famous or because they're popular or because they're clickbaity or whatever. I have to find these people for personally fascinating for me to want to interview them because I want to get down into the nitty gritty of their story, what they do with their lives, what they do professionally, et cetera, et cetera. So with that being said, I want to ask you guys a question. It's rhetorical because you can't answer me right now. But I know you've watched some movies where you've watched stunts play out and it's action packed and whatnot. And we have the idea or the notion that there was a stunt coordinator and stunt actors that played a role in the scene coming to fruition. But did you know that when it comes to love scenes and sex scenes, that there is such thing as an intimacy coordinator? Bet you didn't know that. Because the position didn't exist up until, well, we'll find out what year it was. But when I did my sex scenes, that position didn't exist. And it would have been really, 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 really great if it did because I was in a room with a bunch of men, really, really, really naked, acting like I'm having sex. So we'll get back to that a little bit later. But without further ado, I want to introduce you to my guest. I've got Nicole Calendar sitting with me. She is a mother, a yogi, an actor, a stunt coordinator, and an intimacy coordinator. Nicole, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And I found myself a Black woman intimacy coordinator. Okay, when I tell you closed mouths don't get fed and you got to ask specifically for what it is that you want and you live in Jersey. Come on. Come on. This was kismet. This was meant to be. But I heard that it's a rarity that, a Black woman is an intimacy coordinator in the industry.
Oh, I wouldn't say that it's a rarity.
Okay.
I mean, there are we do have some of us. Less yes than others, but it's not a rarity. And there's quite a handful of us out here.
Question for you. Are intimacy coordinators always women?
No, they're not.
Okay.
Predominantly at this point, yes, but not always. There's plenty of men who are doing it, and I think it's a great idea actually for men to be doing it.
Okay. I feel like we're jumping ahead, so let me just backtrack a little bit and, get just a little bit of personal information, biographical information, professional, background information from you. So where did you grow up? Where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
So I was born in Queens, in St. Albans, and I lived there until, well, I lived there until about the 70s, late 70s, and then my family moved to Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh, wow, that must have been a major culture shock.
Because, well, I was young, I mean, when it happened, so culture shock, you don't really get it when you're a kid, but there were definite differences. Like, I was born in St. Albans, so I was playing stoop ball and stick ball and hanging out in the street, until the lights came up and then we had to go in. When we got to Kentucky, it was like open pastures and I was finding frogs and walking in the creek and you were barefooted. So, but as a kid, I wasn't like, it's a new adventure. It was just a new adventure that I just slid right into.
Okay, so you remained in Louisville, Kentucky until...
I remained in Louisville until I went to college, and I went to Eastern Kentucky University.
Okay.
And then I went to graduate school at the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music.
Okay, so you started off as a musician.
No. So that university has they have everything. It's the College Conservatory of Music. So if you were a piano player or a violinist, yeah, you could attend school there. But they also had an opera department and they had a theater department and they also had everything else that goes along with theater. So you could learn props, you could learn building, you could learn all the aspects of theater.
Oh.
And so I went there. Um, I did my MFA there. Yeah, and we were the first class to be an MFA.
So would you say that that's where you kind of caught the acting bug?
I think I caught the acting bug before that. So I did a lot of dance in undergrad. I was a psychology major. I thought I would go to school in animal behavior.
Oh, I did the same thing, but I wanted to, like, work for the FBI studying serial killers. Hey, hey, you guys know me.
I didn't want to be a serial killer, but I used to feel like I would have been a good sniper.
I mean, you just ended up like being a stunt coordinator and admin, so you might actually hate a really.
I would have been a great sniper. So I don't know how I went from animal behavior into that. But back then, when I wanted to be an animal behavior, people were looking at me like I had two heads. Like, what? How can you be an? What does that even? Right. So they were like, you have to do school psychology or organizational psychology. And I was like, I wasn't interested in any of these things. So back then, when I didn't have that support that I needed to get me into that direction, I just kind of started doing my own thing. It was theater and it was dance, it was musical theater. So I got into a lot of that in school. And then when I graduated, I was able to go to graduate school. And I got in on a scholarship. I also got in because they needed some DEI. I did some DEI.
Yeah, interesting. Needed at times of change.
The inclusion
Right,
aspect of things. They need it.
right.
Um, but I also still had to audition. I still had to attain the same goals that everybody else had to attain. Did I have to work harder for it? I believe I did. Nonetheless, I got there and I got my MFA. And then from there, I stayed in Cincinnati for a little while working in theater. And then I went, I was also doing stage combat, which is fighting to the stage. Yeah. And I was, someone had asked me to audition, if I'd be interested in auditioning for Henry VI, parts 1, 2, and 3, playing Joan of Arc. And I said, yeah, of course, because she had to fight. Yeah. And so I went to this, I had another audition in Cincinnati prior to, and I went to this audition and little chit chat before you do the audition. And the woman was asking me, what are you getting ready to do? And I said, oh, I'm going to audition for this off-Broadway show in New York. And she just, I'm never gonna hire a little black girl like you.
Wow, that's aggressive.
It was very aggressive. And I was,
Not even a microaggression. That was just a full-on macro.
like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'll do my monologue, which I was not feeling confident about. But I went and did the audition and I got the job. So
All right. Take that, bitch. Okay, so the acting bug usually leads people to LA eventually. Did you end up in LA?
no,
Wow, that is another rarity. Unless your focus was stage performance, because then New York makes all the sense in the world.
initially it was.
Yeah.
It was stage performance.
Okay.
So that's why I got there. So I came on an off-Broadway contract. And once I got that job, I relocated. I just said, I'm going to go, got rid of my $300 a month apartment, which was 2 floors and exposed brick and the whole thing. Hansportus. I came here and I was like,
Living in a shoebox for like $2,500.
yeah, I cried all the time when I left the house. I was like, 'cause I got to pay a toll, had gas. I was like, it costs too much money at the house. I remember one time actually backing up on 95 because I was like, that is more of a toll. If I go up to that next exit, I'm not paying that much more money. Because I didn't have it.
Yeah, and New York is not for the faint of heart. It is people to think that California is expensive. I've lived in both cities for a lengthy amount of time, and I'm like, New York will kick your ass.
Yeah.
It really, really will. Okay, so what led you to, becoming a stunt actor and stunt coordinator?
So when I got here, I was auditioning. I was auditioning acting roles. But I wound up on a set one day where they needed a bunch of people to fight. The show was called Full Court Press. They needed a bunch of people to fight, and we all needed to come out of the bleachers and then break out into this big fight on the court. And it was a lot of people, and some of the stunt coordinators then, who are like the big time stunt coordinators now, a lot of them were working on that show. And so they were like, all right, you guys get together and work on a fight. You guys get together and work on a fight.
So you're not an official stunt coordinator right now. I am. No, not you at this moment.
At that moment, yeah. No. Okay. I hadn't even, that was my first stunt job.
Mhm.
But I knew how to fight from my stage work. So there was a lot of stage combat training in theater. So I could fight with sword and shield and rapier dagger and hand to hand and knives, and it's all pretend. And so anyway, we had to work out this fight. And so they saw that, like, I was like, all right, I'm going to do this, and why don't we do that? And then, so they saw that I knew what I was doing, and they were kind of like, where'd you learn?
Yeah, where'd you learn this? Yes.
There wasn't, 5'1" on it the day. And and small,
Light a bit up.
tiny but tough. And so they didn't have this in the industry.
Yeah.
And so they were like, oh, we could really use you. Like, I was general ethnicity for people.
Yeah. Yeah, you got some racial ambiguity. Right, and ambiguity, you're like, oh, yeah, big time.
So, if the person happened to be a Latina, you could do that, hair back or straighten it, and nobody would know the difference.
Right, that
Didn't know the difference.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
If you know.
and so then they started using me because I could also double kids.
Okay.
So, it strapped me down, right? I could just be a kid because you're not looking at my face. Like, my face shouldn't be on camera. I'm just trying to hit my mark. And so I just started getting work because I was a type, that they didn't have. And then I just was like, oh, I can do this. And so I just started training and learning how to do it for film as opposed to theater.
Okay, so when it comes to stunt coordination, I mean, you don't know everything all at once. Like, I'm sure, like, it's an accumulation of knowledge because you just mentioned using, like, a whole bunch of different weaponry.
Right.
So how does that process even happen,
So I learned stage combat. I went to workshops where you had to pass certain tests to earn a certification in that weapon. So you would take time to learn broadsword, and you would have to learn a specific set of choreography and certain moves that you had to execute with efficiency with a broadsword. And then also,
Is that like Game of Thrones type class? So yeah, the heavy, huge, heavy, and radiate. Yes, was it? No, King Arthur. That's those, right? Yeah, King Arthur with sword in the stones. Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when I played Joan of Arc, she had to fight with a broadsword. And so I had one custom made, or I didn't have a custom made, but the people who did the fight choreographer on that had it custom made. Like, my armor was custom made for me because I'm little.
Yeah.
My sword was custom made so that my hands could hold the grip, because if I used a bigger one, it was too big. So I learned how to fight with rapier and dagger. So rapier is the bigger sword and the dagger is the smaller sword. So you're learning moves with both of those weapons. So broadsword, rapier and dagger, small sword, which is like a rapier but just a little smaller, and the moves are much more finessed, I should say, stylized also.
You know what I'm thinking of right now?
No.
Arya Stark.
Oh, did you watch?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, her little, like, little needle, but then she also had, like, the Valerian steel dagger. It has a whole storyline behind it and stuff like that. But when you're talking, I'm thinking about that because she, if anybody watched Game of Thrones, Arya goes from being like a character that a lot of people just really didn't like to being like, holy crap, she is a badass, and she just saves the day and she saves humanity and whatnot. And she's just watching that full development of her character becoming like a mercenary, basically.
And I think there were scenes where you watched her learn.
Yeah, right? Like 5 seasons of watching her get her ass kicked. Yeah, it was a little frustrating. We were like, girl, get your life together, But that was just what I was thinking when you were talking about all that weaponry. Okay, so like nunchucks, like the ninja stuff.
Our place was nunchucks in Queens.
Tough neighborhood, huh?
There were toys. Right. I remember learning how to rap, do some of the stuff. And it was just to play.
Yeah.
We didn't know what we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I knocked myself out a couple times in the back.
That sounds funny and not all the time.
Yeah. it was all in good fun.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let me ask you this. What is an intimacy coordinator by definition?
By definition, an intimacy coordinator is an advocate for anyone who is involved in a simulated sex scene, or where there might be nudity, or where there might be some heightened emotion. An advocate for the people in that scene, but also help to curate the scene. I help make sure that everybody is comfortable in executing the story. So I like to tell people that I meet them from they've read the script, they see what's there, and they are still saying yes. Yeah, right. They're still saying, yeah, I'm comfortable to do this. So now that we're here and you say you're comfortable, now we're going to talk about how we're going to tell this story. And we're going to make sure that they're comfortable getting the story, or they're comfortable telling the story, but also comfortable with it physically. I'm also going to make sure that the director is getting the story that she wants, right? So I said she has, she can get it nice and hot and spicy if she wants it,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to make sure that it looks like that, but everybody is still safe. So it's highly choreographed. Yes, just like any of the fights are. They are highly choreographed. Haney. I'm jumping ahead. I also make sure that nudity riders are filled out appropriately so that there's legal backup on what you've decided, what you're comfortable saying that you will do. It protects the actor. It protects production. Yes. And then I will have conversations with hair and makeup. They've already read the script, but I'll have a rehearsal, so I'll be like, well, she might look a little more rough around the edges once she's done. They might want to know that. I'll also work with wardrobe to make sure that we have the proper modesty garment.
Modesty garments.
Modesty garment.
Okay. Yeah. So let me tell you about my sex scene.
Okay.
Okay. So I have a couple of intimacy scenes because intimacy is not necessarily sex. Yeah. Um, but I'll go back to, intimacy scenes that I've done that were not sex, but it was closeness. But I did a movie called Days of Wrath. And when I say it had everybody in it, like it had Robert De Niro was in it, Amber Valletta was in it, Jeffrey Dean Morgan was in it. Like star-studded, really never came out. Hollywood's a weird place. Okay, there will be like movies that are shelved and it has like Leonardo DiCaprio in it. Like it's just a strange place as to what gets held up in, I don't know what the term is, like
Editing, post production,
or legalities.
legalities, or funding.
Yeah.
Or there's a lot of things.
A lot of it up. So it's 2007. So intimacy coordinators, I don't think they existed back then. Okay, so it's basically up to me to figure shit out. Me and the makeup artist. Daddy wardrobe, the makeup artist. Okay, so I'm doing a sex scene with Wilmer Valderrama.
Okay.
And I still have pictures from me in the makeup room. I got a robe on. I have no bra on. I think I might have had like little nipple covers or something like that. They took a nude colored thong and they cut the sides of it off. And then they just taped the little triangle to the front and then slid the hammock up the back and just hope my butt cheeks would hold it together. And that was it. And then they just put a sock on his member, and that was it. And then, yep, they closed set, but there managed to be, I don't know, like 10 men there. Yep. And so we're at a bedroom set, and we have to simulate like we're having sex. And it was mortifying.
Yeah.
Like it was mortifying.
Then were you kissing and
Girl,
what did they talk about?
yeah, I kind of brought that up. Let's just go with yes. We'll just go with yes because I mean, it was a lot of noise. Oh God, so embarrassing.
Very embarrassing because it's loud.
Yes, it's loud.
Did you talk about whether you were going to use tongue or not use tongue?
No, none of this was
We
discussed.
talk about that these days.
Yes, I know. I can imagine, but at this time, no, it didn't. There was no discussion, and it's just like there was no woman there to try to coach me through the situation. So I was left up to my own devices. I was left up to my own and prisoner to my own insecurities.
Yeah.
And also just this, willingness and overwhelming need for, validation and approval because it's fucking Wilmer Balderrama. And I know who else is in this movie. You know what I mean? And it's gonna be huge. And I don't want to be the one that screws it up. Like that was a shitty position to be in, a woman.
Oh, exposed. You are hyper exposed. I mean, it's like when you have the gynecologist. Very right. You're blade out. They're telling you, scoot down, scoot down. You're so exposed and vulnerable. And you're very vulnerable, and you have people saying things to you.
Yeah. Like cut, and you're just like really right now.
Yeah. And then they'll say cut too, and there you are.
Yeah.
And it's like, can somebody bring something to cover me up? Or
Yeah. And I don't remember that happening either. I just remember literally Wilmer wrapping his arms around me just to cover everything. It was terrible. I honestly hope this movie never comes out. And you know what? Just the fact I'm talking about it, it's probably going to come out to like tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like Netflix or something like that. So it was like gnarly. So, okay, yeah. Question. When did intimacy coordinators become a thing, like an actual position on the call sheet? Will it hashtag me too? Was that what led?
It led to it for
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
There were people doing it prior to that. So 2018, 2017, there were people doing it, but it probably didn't have the title.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. So 2018 was when I had done my first legit job. It was an HBO job where it was. I cringe when you talk about on the call sheet because that becomes a very specific thing.
In what way?
When you're on the call sheet, you're usually on the front of the call sheet are your cast members. And number one, to what? Yeah. On the back of the call sheet is your crew.
Yes.
They didn't initially want to have intimacy coordinators listed.
Why?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it's like production. They didn't know what to do with us. Where do they put us?
Men regularly down.
Now,
Sorry.
now they had to recognize it and then pay for it.
Recognize the need for it too.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, well,
That's hella progressive.
because, right. And they also didn't want to, I feel like there was this sense of like you're coming in as a consultant,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which we're not. We're not consultants. We're here to not just consult. We're actually here to choreograph. We're here to keep people safe. We're here to tell a story. I like to consider myself a physical storyteller, whether it's me falling down and hitting the ground and how I react to that, or whether it's in an intimate scene. Mm-hmm. And so I think initially they were like, well, you're just going to come in and do a little something. And then you're going to go away and you don't need to be listed.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to fight hard to
So were they trying to avoid this from becoming like unionized work?
I think so.
Okay. All right. Well, then that makes sense. But either it's one or the other, right? We sort of changed that. We're gonna get to that. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. We're gonna get to that. Okay. So how does one even train to become an intimacy coordinator? Like, what does that training look like? Because you talk about weaponry certification, but what's this process like?
So there are several organizations, schools that are training people in intimacy coordinating all over, East Coast, West Coast, and everything in between. I'm not going to be able to list all the names right now because that's,
Yeah. You could just talk about what the training looks like.
okay. So the training looks like things like, so a lot of the training is stuff like mental health first aid.
I've never heard that term before. Mental health first aid.
Which you could go to any first aid place at the Y and take mental health first aid. I recommend everybody do it, honestly.
But I don't think, nobody knows that term.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to figure that out. We're going to do something with that. Mental health first aid. Okay, continue.
And that is a lot of what I feel like is psychology. Psychology 101, how to talk to people, how to get on the same level physically with that. And I don't mean mentally with that, but literally get to where you're eye to eye with somebody when you're talking to them, not looking down at them or like having to struggle looking up, which is usually mine.
I know, right, what you mean.
So mental health first aid, allyship, learning to be an ally, choreography, information about the modesty garments, how they go on, learning about the writers, learning about the Screen Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA contract so that you can uh, work to help fill out the writer and help actors understand what their contract entails. So it kind of covers a lot of different things.
Okay. Um, we'll circle back to that, but I was interested since you're a stunt coordinator and now an intimacy coordinator for several years, do you find that there's any similarities or parallels between curating a stunt performance and curating an intimacy scene?
Absolutely. Tell me. I feel like they overlap a lot, which is why I feel like I was able to kind of incorporate intimacy coordinating into my skill set. So again, it's physical storytelling.
Yeah.
It's, if you're fighting somebody and somebody gets punched and that person reacts and then they go and grab you, you have to know who's winning and who's losing, right? A fight has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an end. Who's won and who's lost, and maybe that dynamic shifts as you're going through. The same thing with an intimate scene, right? It doesn't start once you've gotten to the bed, right? It might start at the doorway, coming in and whatever is happening. Is it aggressive? Is it calming? Is it soothing? Is it sensual? Are we in a rush? Right? So it's physically telling that story and then choreographing it so that everyone can repeat it however many times it needs to be repeated. And if it's for live performance, 5 times a week and twice on Sundays. And then, and that everybody is safe and able to, do their best work, really feel like they're in the scene and enjoying themselves, but also knowing that they're safe. They know that somebody's hand is not gonna go somewhere where it shouldn't go, right? Because we've talked about it. We know where the no-touch zones are. And so you can kind of broad stroke things.
I like that.
But
Well,
like
so sure.
you can like give an outline to this is where this is good area, touch area, this is good touch area. We're not touching genitals at all, right? So you lay that information out. If somebody accidentally touches a genital, right? One time it's like, okay, oh, I slipped. Okay, but twice, now we have a problem. Yeah, because we have discussed this. It has been made very, very clear what is supposed to happen and what's not supposed to happen, at least if you're in my rehearsal. Yeah. Right? It's very, very clear. And I will say that most of the time people leave rehearsal from doing the simulated sex scenes. They come in, yeah, they're nervous and they don't really know what to expect, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
All rehearsals take place clothed, and with a producer and the director and myself and the other actor. They leave that rehearsal after we've rehearsed and they're like,
Sigh of relief. Yeah, none of that
I
happened.
feel so much better. Like, because there's no ambiguity. Yeah. They don't show up on set and it's like, oh, what am I doing? Yeah. What do I have on? Oh, just nipple covers? I wasn't aware of that. Well, if you have an intimacy coordinator, once you've accepted the job, your intimacy coordinator calls you and they have already spoken to the director, so they understand the story, they understand all the beats that we're trying to get, and then I can relay that to the actor. Ask them if they're comfortable with that. But then we get into the rehearsal, the nitty gritty, and we're breaking it down. Right? Actors come with a lot of information that they to give and to share. So they might be like, well, I was thinking, right?
Yeah, it's a very collaborative. It's supposed to be a very collaborative, process. I just did a movie last year, and it was the first time that I did stunts in a movie.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with this woman named Fox Han? Okay, she's amazing. Canadian. She's does
Okay.
the cat's meow. She's everything. And my God, her and her team were just so incredible, and it was so precision like. And but it was also very collaborative, and so I was so excited about doing that because that was my first time ever doing stunt.
Did you do them?
Yeah,
Yes.
it was so exciting, like acting like I'm kicking the shit out of somebody, putting on my kidnapper and whatnot. Like I got to like break a guitar on
Yes,
the ground. It
yes.
was
It's so
awesome.
empowering.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is. So like that is a welcome,
Mhm.
um, you are a welcome presence on set for actors. I can, speak for myself having done that. Um, so you've got some really, 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 really big, huge projects under your belts. Like she just finished doing Kind of Pregnant with Amy Schumer. It's a movie on Netflix right now, and Amy Schumer's Amy Schumer. You also were an intimacy coordinator for the Power Universe. Yes, I told you she was a big deal. So one question I did have is there like a lot of differences between creating an intimacy scene, curating an intimacy scene, I should say, for a comedy versus a drama? Okay, expound on that a little bit.
Well, a drama, I feel like it's a drama. It's usually serious, right? And if you're getting into the intimate scene, I mean, there can be some hilarity in it, but it's usually a little bit of yeah, yeah. And then you get back into things. But with comedy, it's a different rhythm.
Yeah.
It's a syncopated rhythm that makes it funny, right? It could be either because it's like dun, 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 right? That's funny,
Right,
right?
yeah.
Or just like ugh.
Yeah. All that word.
Right. Yeah. So you find a bunch of different rhythms and things to bring out the humor.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get someone like Amy Schumer who is game to
Yeah, it's to do any, right? She's just, yeah.
at one point she was like, I feel like I need to talk you back a little bit, Nicole. So I was like, well, what if we did? And what if we did? And everybody was game, but she had the bigger picture in mind, very more so than I did. But she's just so game and so was Will, who was in the show. He's just so
Yeah, well, I've got a bunch of questions like specifically for Kind of Pregnant. It was a very, very funny movie. This might be a strange question. I don't know how you're gonna respond to it. Okay. But is there a difference between coordinating intimacy scenes between black actors and white actors?
I think uh that there are subtle differences. There are nuanced differences. Like for example, I feel like if you're let's talk about hair. Like
Oh,
cuz
yeah. Because some of the greatest sexy is when she still has her bonnet on. Like, right? That's some of the greatest sexy because that just says so much about the two people, their comfort level with each other, maybe how long they've been together, or just how over him she is. Right? She don't even care. Oh, she looks no more. And like, you're right about the nuances. Yeah. And that is very specific to the black experience. Okay, so
that's what I mean more like so if we were going to do some kind of well let's run your fingers through their hair. Have like
yeah, no,
no
probably not.
I'm going to guess that's
Not happen. Not gonna happen.
that's just my opinion. Feel free to chime in. You know what I mean? Board how you would do that, right? If you were gonna start going through the hair is different than I feel like what white people how they would go about it. Just even their dance, they would start like this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Then you guess I know.
Right. So I think stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the basics of like we all have to kind of get mostly naked here.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is vulnerable. Everybody. And I have watched the biggest, strongest man be like, "Oh, well, not even, but just like, you know, I feel really
Mm-hmm. Exposed.
exposed." And I'm like, well, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so what can we do to help you? Yes, you do feel exposed. That makes sense. But how can I help you? What can I do as the intimacy coordinator to help that out? So a lot of times things are under the sheets. And I'm like, just keep in mind that you have that coverage.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in control.
Yeah.
Right? You don't fling that shit up. Right? You can keep a hold of that shit and pull it over you if you want to pull it over you. So I'm always talking to people about how to work the sheets.
Mm-hmm. Do you tell people that you're an intimacy coordinator, like in daily life?
Not always.
I was gonna say, what kind of questions does the average person ask you when they find out that you're an intimacy coordinator? Before, like after they said, "Well, what the hell is that?"
Well, it's funny because I also didn't tell people I was a stunt performer either. I mean, because I get the whole, no, man, no, oh my God, you can't speak. You're so little.
Yeah.
Anyway, you're a woman. Right.
Hmm.
So the first question I get is like a lot of uncomfortable laughter.
Yeah.
And then,
Can you come to my house?
100% of the time, is a man asking you that stupid shit. All right. Okay.
98% of the time.
Okay. I mean, you know, hey, listen, the truth is that about 98% of them might actually need an intimacy coordinator.
That's fine.
Right.
And you can call somebody else. My job is an intimacy coordinator for film and television. I'm not here to get involved in people's personal lives
Oh my God.
at all.
Yeah.
And when I work with you as an intimacy coordinator, I'm not getting into your personal life. That's not my business. It's not at all. If you wish to share some stuff with me, I'm open and I'll certainly listen, but I'm not going in and being like, so how many partners have you had? Oh, how do you like it? Right?
Yeah.
Right. That's not my business. We have a story to tell.
Hmm.
Right. I feel like I'm pretty in tune to a lot of things and I'm pretty in tune to people's physical movements. And if I feel they're struggling in a specific movement, then I'll offer assistance on how to move. I'll show them how to move. And I'll be like, go home and practice. And they're totally uncomfortable with that. But I'm like, you're going to come to me on the day and be like, I just want to make sure I look really sexy and I want to look really hot. And I'm like, well, then you need to
Move like this. And so
sometimes they listen and sometimes they don't.
You kind of touched on it before, but I'm just wondering how much input does the director have in the curation of an intimate scene, especially one that might be like really salacious? Because I mean, we're talking power. Whoa, okay, like yeah, those who were held to were coordinator. They don't see the original prayer, right? Okay, so yeah, but so then since then you've been like raising Canaan, but
They're raising Canaan.
yeah, so basically it's nothing's changed except your participation, but the sex scenes are still very, very, very graphic and real. Do you ever get asked like, are they really having stunts? Yeah, that's like an urban myth, you know, in movie making. There's a couple of scenes that have looked so real to people that, you know, the rumor is that they were actually having sex. Like,
I mean, think about it. Okay, so let's go back a little bit to a closed set detail. A closed set detail, it is closed, but that means that there are minimal people on set.
yes, that's what they said about mine, and it really hang.
Right. That's still minimal.
Yeah, I
Jared Tovold, right? If you've got your camera operator, he might need a dolly.
mm-hmm.
You need a grip to push the dolly.
DP.
Did I say DP yet?
No.
DP, your sound person.
Mm-hmm.
That's just on the set proper.
Mhm.
I'm talking about if you're here, right? Those people still need to be in the room. They have to watch. Outside of the set where there's monitors, your electrics has to watch. Your DIT, your digital imaging technology, has to watch. The script supervisor has to watch. Generally, a producer has to watch because there's tone. We have to make sure we're keeping with tone, but it should just be one producer, right? So you establish who essential personnel is prior to it all, so that when it's the one person that has to go around and make sure that it's a closed set, I know who all those people are. So at the director's monitor, you'll have your script supervisor, your producers, and back and watching, your intimacy coordinator. Uh, and that should be it. But you might want one person from hair, one person from makeup to make sure you're still looking okay. Well, right. So they could either join the monitor or they could use Q-Take and watch. But I have to make sure that people who have access to Q-Take are just those people. So I'm talking with that person to make sure there's limited access there. I have to make sure that if the monitors aren't already tucked away in a room, that they're out where everyone can see it, that we have a flags and tents around to cover the monitors because it's so easy for people to just
Walk by and see, like, crafty shouldn't be watching.
right.
Right, right, yeah.
And I had to tell people, especially when I first started, if you're not essential personnel, could you please step away
Yeah.
from the monitor? And in the beginning, people were like, who are you?
Yeah.
Because they didn't know.
Right.
They didn't know who I was. They didn't know what the position was. And because production was like clunky and getting this started, they were just like, oh, there's an intimacy coordinator on set. They didn't introduce me. They didn't let anybody know who I was. So I had no authority
Yeah.
initially. And I had to build up that authority, which took its toll. But by the time we got done with all the ghosts and raising Canaans and one of the great things about being on the series, and it was just me, is that when I came to set, everybody was like, oh,
Yeah.
something's going down today. So everybody already knew, like you would move from one location to the other, and everyone's getting their stuff all set up. I'd let everybody settle and figure out where they're going to put their carts and where they're going to put their monitors. And if they saw me walking around, then they would already start flagging and tetting monitors. Plus, they knew from production meetings or moving their monitor, like back it up against a wall. And then I would station PAs around to say, nobody can come past here. Nobody can come past here.
Okay. I have a question about actors' outside behavior, but before I get to that, just branding question. It might not be a scene that you've created, but you curated, but is there any particular, like, love or sex scene that just kinda stands out in your mind as something that was, like, just beautifully well crafted, like, in a movie or TV show that you've seen before? That you kinda keep in your mind as, like, maybe some inspo?
Oh, that is a great question. And I do have some that I kind of use as a reference to like go and look at if people need to look at. It's a weird thing, to all of a sudden be like looking at a bunch of simulated sex scenes, but I don't have any that come to mind that I could say from this show. Uh uh I see when I watch them, I'm often like, I'm paying attention and kind of like trying to see things. I did see a scene on Severance recently that I was like, wow, that was really well done. Yeah. And that intimacy coordinator is here in the city
Okay.
who did that. And it's partially her input and it's partially a lot of the director's input, right? I mean, this is the set that they've chosen, where they've decided to do it, all of that, right? That's uh, production design and the director with their view. So the director has a whole lot to do with what they want, what the story is, and what you're going to see, because they're shot listing stuff, right? So they're going around to all the locations and being like, oh well, what if we get here, and what if we're down here? Put the camera down here or whatever. So yeah, they're 100% integral in what's happening. And when I have a good relationship with the directors, they are open to my suggestions. Initially, in the beginning, I definitely had people they didn't want to hear anything I had to say. I was just like the police on set, right? Which I don't look at myself like that, and I don't want to be that. Like, I'm not the joke police. I'm not that police to say we can't do stuff. I'm the person that's saying, yes, let's do everything you want to do. Let's make it look good. Let's just do it safely.
Yeah. Right? So when it comes to actors' outside behavior, like in terms of in production, whether it's a movie or if it's a series, um, and their outside antics. And let me tell a little story to kind of maybe, create the example. So I was in this movie called Three Can Play That Game, and Vivica was the star. Jasmine Lewis and don't get me lying, Jason George. They were the main characters. And I had a supporting role, and I was playing opposite Tony Rock, and I wanted to kill him. Um, and he was playing the guy that I end up marrying, and we were living in Atlanta, so production was like basically like a month long, and Atlanta, was a city that we were filming in, and my God, we had like so much fun, especially Tony. He had a lot of fun. because he was a single man and he's, attractive and he's funny. So, he was not at a loss for female company.
Yes.
And I remember we all had to take STD tests prior to the film prior to filming starting. And
Was that productions?
that was production. Okay. That was production. And I just remember begging Tony. I said, "Listen, if you're gonna have sex with a girl, please just don't eat her out the night before our wedding scene when I have to kiss you. Please, God, just don't."
Fair question.
Thank you. And I don't know if he followed the rules, but whatever. So that leads me back to the question of actors' outside behavior and concerns that their romantic counterparts on set might have, like me.
Yeah.
Have you ever had to address that or deal with that?
I have had to uh I haven't had to deal with it, but I've learned a bit. So it didn't cross over to the set so much. But I've definitely been working with a young man who he's single, good
Just out
looking,
is out here.
he's just out there
He's all willy nilly.
all willy-nilly and not having a problem letting you know. Yeah, so I was very aware. Now, in this particular case, it wasn't a simulated sex scene, but there was kissing and stuff like that. Nice, there was this role as an intimacy.
That's not
Wild. Like I feel a little wild, and sometimes it's like, I look at the situation and I think, oh, I'm glad that's not me.
yeah.
I'm glad that is not me.
Okay.
However, I talk to the actors a lot about oral hygiene. So no matter what, like I'm not getting into what you did the night,
It's not, yeah, it's actually,
right?
that would be,
Right, but I'll be
Wait.
like, look, right, floss your teeth. A lot of people don't floss their teeth. I don't understand this, right? So I'm like, floss your teeth. And then, mouthwash, get some Listerine or this other one that's a really good one. I can't think of it right now. And scrape your tongue. And so
do that before maybe she's happy to tell us to do that.
yes, do it before your scene. And I had one young man come to his scene and he had just had some shrimp and a cup of coffee.
That's such an awesome combination.
Right?
Because and it's all kind of about it.
Not like he did it in his dressing room and then cleaned up. So it's like now you don't have time to clean up and you're all this close to each other talking and now and I was just like, I just for you to be like women just don't like that in general. Like, just for
Right.
future reference, don't do that.
Have you ever had to curate a love scene with two actors that absolutely despised each other?
No,
Okay.
no, I had not.
And that must be interesting.
I would think it would be very hard to do. Yeah. And body language says a lot. So if you're in a scene with somebody that you don't like, you're a little kind of tense and rigid. And so I have little tricks that I would offer him. I am watching the monitor.
Yeah.
Because I go back and I watch. I don't stay. I don't stay right in the room because, for one, it's uncomfortable. For two, I need to look at the lens. I want to see what you all are seeing. So I go back and I look at the lens. So then I can come back and be like, here's how this is reading.
Yeah.
Right? Because I know what you think you're doing is one thing, but what I'm seeing on the lens is a very different thing. So what can we do?
Yeah.
And so, I'll just talk about relaxing, dropping the shoulders. And, when you start the kiss initially and everybody's just kind of into it, if somebody's body is not getting into it, I'll just be like, like exhale here. Drop your knees a little bit, right? So it looks like your body is getting it, right? You are not giving in.
Yeah.
Is it in the least? And I might know that, but these little physical things to adjust the body will help tell the physical story.
Yeah. So I read somewhere when I was researching Kind of Pregnant, Will Forte, he plays opposite Amy Schumer. He was quoted as saying it's easier with a person that you're friends with. Would you agree?
I don't know.
I mean, had actors told you that, like when, because that happens a lot. Like the acting community is it's very tiny. It seems large, but it's kind of tiny. So you will find yourself like, getting reoccurring roles, or reoccurring jobs, and you'll see a lot of the same people on a set. So like you've got to develop relationships and friendships and stuff like that. So I figured that, in that particular circumstance, you might have come across actors who are like, for example, perfect example.
Okay.
Game of Thrones, another Game of Thrones reference. Jon Snow, who's played by Kit Harington, him and Amelia Clark are really good friends.
Okay.
And she's really good friends with his wife.
Yeah.
Who is played by, I believe her name's Rose Leslie, and she was the redhead Wilde who was like, "You know nothing, Jon Snow." Yeah, And so it's just like, I was just like, when I'm watching their sex scene, I'm good, like Amelia Clark and Jon Snow, Kit Harington. I'm just like, she's besties, like this wife, like that's weird.
I would think it would be weird, but if everyone's discussing it,
Yeah,
you also know that it's simulated. Like the modesty garments that we will discuss, they, they keep everything tipped up and locked down.
but what happens when there is nudity? When there's full frontal nudity happening? Like, we were talking about Tyler Perry, and I know that this isn't your gig, but you're familiar. You're friends with the intimacy coordinator on set.
Yeah.
I watched the first season or the first half of season 1, because I was interviewing a couple of the actors from the show. Julian Orton, who plays Roy Beller, he's amazing.
Mhm.
T.S. Madison, who plays Daga. I interviewed both of them, and they're fantastic on the show, fantastic people. But boy, is that show graphic. The sex scenes are graphic. Which show? Beauty in Black. I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, and it's just like, there's full frontal nudity. Like, there's one sex scene that was just so jarring to watch. Not because it was like a homosexual sex scene, but because it was so graphic, and I was like,
Did you see an erect penis?
you saw like testicles.
Yeah, there was probably prosthetic.
That's what I heard, and I was like, why do I want like a prosthetic set of testicles right now? I don't know what I'm gonna do with them. Maybe I'm gonna hang them on the back of my car or something.
Hang them from
I
your-
don't know, something. Maybe from the rearview mirror. Something. I'm going to use them with something. I promise. But what happens in intimate scenes where there is actual, like, there's no modesty garment, like there is full frontal nudity happening? Like, what happens there?
Well, if it's full frontal nudity for someone with a penis, if it's flaccid, you can just it can just
that way.
persons, right?
Mhm.
But if to have an erection, I mean, you have to have a prosthetic. You can't.
Is it always a prosthetic? Okay. Wait, hold that knot.
Okay.
There's a movie. It's called Shame. Have you heard of it? I haven't now. Okay. Do you know who Michael Fassbender is?
Yeah.
Oh, still that even car. All right, he's fine as hell. He's like the young Magneto, okay? He's the terrible slave owner in 12 Years a Slave. That's why I never watched that movie, because I cannot see him like that, okay? So he's in this movie called Shame. I promise you, like within the first 3 minutes of this movie, he walks by a TV like in his apartment, full frontal, like just elephant trunk swaying, and it's impressive. So in my mind, that's him.
Right. But if it was flaccid, it could have been him. Right? It depends on the studio.
Right. So it was indie.
CB. Okay.
It might have been like HIV or something like that.
If they're a studio that allows that, and then you can have that.
Yeah.
Like CBS and NBC, they're not.
Oh, it's not happening. That was not obvious there.
HBO?
Yeah. Yo, yes.
Right? So if it's a flaccid penis, you can hang out all day with a flaccid penis on camera if that's what people want.
Hey, buddy. Right. Mm-hmm.
But if it has to be an erect penis, right?
Yeah.
Like how long? It takes 4 hours sometimes to shoot a scene.
Just put a rubber band on the base of it. That's what porn stars do. Or so I heard. I don't really.
Oh no, I'll keep that in mind. But there are with the Screen Actors Guild,
Their contract does not allow for that kind of thing to happen. Okay.
So if you're under a SAG contract, uh, you're not supposed, you cannot have actual sex. Um, so and also, a lot of studios won't allow an erect penis. They'll allow a flaccid penis.
Okay.
So it depends on that. And then if it is going to be an erect penis, what are we doing with this penis?
That's the question I always ask myself.
But and if you're going to do something with it, it can't actually do, right? Because you can't, it's not porn,
Right.
right? So if you're shooting pornography, then you could take anybody's erect penis and do whatever you want with it. But when you're shooting a film, you can't do that.
Have you ever had to wait for an erection to pass?
What I tell people on a regular basis is, I mean, this is your body doing these acts. And so your body doesn't know that it's not real, right? You do, and your mind might, but when you're in the throes of it, your body doesn't know. So it's likely to react. One of the reasons we have the garments that we use, so is that if someone does have a vascular reaction, the partner.
New word. I'm sorry. New word for hard-on erection, a vascular reaction. Okay, put that in your little mental Rolodex. See, I'm gonna use that. Please stop. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna use that on the pod. I'm gonna sound really, really, really obnoxiously smart. But go on.
So if that does happen, then it's slightly contained. And then I have a little signal that I'll ask my people to do, and that signal tells me that they need a break.
Okay.
If they need a break, I'll let the first AD know we need to take a break. And I mean, it could be the same for a woman who's on her menstrual flow at that time, right? She might need a break. She might need to change some things, right? We need a break. We don't need the whole world to know about it. So I would say we need to take a break. I will allow that person to go take care of their business. However, they need to take care of their business. We'll give it time to happen, and then we'll come back to the scene. Now, I will also add that shooting a simulated sex scene is not sexy.
It's not. It's
not.
mortifying. It's
Yeah.
weird. It's cold.
It's cold, and you still have lines. Yeah, and I still have a mark to hit. So you got a lot of stuff going on. For the most part, the vascular reaction is not like out of control.
Right.
That brain is doing a lot of different stuff.
Right. I just thought of something actually that's not on my cue cards because I want to circle back to Kind of Pregnant and talk about what it was like working with Amy Schumer because she said she relied very, very heavily on you to make the movie and scenes gel. But when we think about intimacy and we think about sex, we think about consent.
Yeah.
But a movie might be depicting a graphic scene.
Yeah.
Are you called in for that as well?
Yes.
Okay, so
We should be.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I honestly don't even know what the question is here. Like it's hey, I do it. I get yeah. I guess it's just like tell us how that process goes because I'm sure that it is. I would think it would be wildly different from a consensual intimate scene between two actors.
It's not wildly different. I mean, technically, it's not wildly different because we're still choreographing it. Right? So everyone still has to say, yes, I am okay to shoot this scene.
But you have to choreograph harm now.
Yes.
Yeah, and maybe some physical abuse.
Yes. Which is why it's perfect to hire me because
Right.
I can do both. Right? Usually they would just have a single stunt coordinator come in and try to work that out because there's abuse. And not necessarily dealing with the intimate aspects of it. But because of my skill set, I can easily do both. But anyway, so yeah, now you have to choreograph the harm, right? And you have to be really cognizant of people's body language and how they're responding. If it's the woman who is being harmed and all of this stuff, she's got to learn choreography. And then it is that happens, or is she getting tossed around? How is she handling it once we've come out of it? Are they getting a bit frazzled while we're going through some really watching a lot to be like, hey, why don't we've done this a lot. Let's take a little break. Let's let this person like step out of the room. Take a break. Realize everything's okay. Like just refocus, right? Get the feedback on the ground. Realize that it's not you personally, it is the character that's going through this. So now we can get back to getting out of me and getting into the character, and then leaving the character behind and getting back into what my life is. So we do stuff that's considered closure when we're done with scenes so that you can wrap the scene up.
What does that look like? What does closure look?
It could look like a variety of different things. Some people do kind of like like a high five, we're done. Some people will hug. I'll try to bring everyone together and it's, how's everyone feeling about what they did today? I think it looked fantastic. Do you feel good about it? And let the actors have that moment of, yes, I felt good about it. Thank you. They can do whatever it is they need to do, but now that's done. And now they can go on and do either their next scene or go back into their lives and not left any kind of residual juju left between the two people who had to go through this experience together. So by just having a moment of, you good? I'm good. Or, I'm still feeling a little uncomfortable. I'm not really sure. Then we can go off and kind of have that moment and maybe do some exercises that just rid that.
Do you ever find that coordinating a scene like that takes a toll on your mental health?
It all takes a toll.
Okay. So what's your relax, relate, release process? Like, how do you decompress from that
Um,
so that you can like live to fight another day?
um, well, what my process has become recently is I don't take too many jobs uh, because I feel emotionally invested. Uh, and that's kind of a personal thing. I don't feel like that's something that's across the board. I know a lot of people that just had job after job after job and they're juggling a whole bunch and they're having people cover them there and cover them there. Here, I kind of feel like once I've established a relationship with someone, unless there's an absolute, I don't know what, that will I send in a cover? Because we've already started to form a relationship. So one thing I do is I just don't take too many jobs. And secondly, I do a lot of breathing. Uh, I do a lot of walking. So I live in a really hilly area and I walk a lot. I walk like 3 to 4 miles daily in an area just because it lets my brain, like I don't listen to things when I walk. I don't put on a podcast or listen to music. I call it free brain.
Yeah.
I'm going to go free brain for a little while because it just lets all of that like work itself out.
Trust me, I know. When I lived in California, the canyons were like, that was my therapy.
Yeah.
I had a therapist as well, but the canyons were my therapy. I could go to the canyon and I could just be so completely wound up and I could have so much on my brain or I could literally have something that I'm like trying to like work through. I can't, I just don't have the breakthrough. And I'm just walking up and it's just like, you're just staring at like, just the major beauty. Yeah. And you're just, you get this clarity that comes over you once it's over. So I totally understand that.
Physical activity. Yes, really beneficial to me. And just not overloading myself. Like I don't need stress in my life at this point.
Yeah.
And I thrived on stress, I think, when I was younger. And
We got the stamina for that shit.
yes,
Not now.
yeah, not out now. And so I'm kind of like, I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
So that's one way.
Okay, so I wanted to circle back and talk about Kind of Pregnant with Amy Schumer because for two reasons. She said that she relied very heavily on you for the whole thing to gel, in her words. But she was also a producer as well as the main actress. So my second question will be about power dynamics because that is definitely a thing, and there is a very big story right now happening between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, and a lot of it is just is related to power dynamics. So we'll get back to that question, but working with Amy Schumer, her saying she relied heavily on you for the sets and production to gel. What does she mean by that?
Um, well, we talked a lot about what we thought the scene was going to be, and she had a lot of ideas, and they moved through really quickly, like because it all makes sense in her head. Also, I had worked with her on Life and Beth, so we had started to establish a relationship, and we had some pretty sticky scenes in that, and we maneuvered them well together. So I felt like we had a good working relationship. There was at one point I thought for sure that I was going to get fired. I was like, well, I butted heads with her. I butted heads with her one too many times, so this is it. And it'll be a good story. I got fired.
Yeah.
And the next day she gave me this great compliment about how we were working together. So I was like, okay.
Yeah.
That was my insecurity that we didn't butt heads, but I had a job to do and so did she.
Yeah.
So anyway, she's got a lot of ideas. They move through her head really quickly and they're very clear in her head. But they, for me, didn't always come out as clear. So we would work through. And then as we're working through, we're both like, well, what about this? And what about this? Well, no, that doesn't read right. That's not telling the right story. Or I know one of the things she talked about for Kind of Pregnant was like just lining things up. So like I said, I would go and watch the monitor.
Yeah.
And she was straddling Will's character in the show. But it looked like she was sitting here, right? And she's going back and forth. And I was like, nothing's happening. You're just not the right position. It can't work. You got to scoot down. And she's feeling like that feels too far down. It doesn't feel lined up. And I'm like, you got to scoot down a little bit more. Now it's looking lined up. Like what you were doing before doesn't make physical sense. Yeah. Right. So she relied on me for that kind of stuff. And while she was straddling him, I have this deflated ball. It's like partially deflated, and like one of the exercise balls. I never had an opportunity to use it in a manner that I was like, this is a prop that, in my opinion, doesn't work very well. When this is a situation, I was like, I can use this ball finally, because she could just sit on it and just bounce up and down on it. Right? It's not hurting her. It's not hurting him. It's not right on his genitals. It's area below, or if it has to be higher, sometimes higher. So we did a lot of, that's not the right movement. Yeah, you need to move it like this if that's what you're doing. Or if you're going to bounce, right, then we need to be in a different place if you're going to be like that. And that's a lot of other just physiological things come into play.
Yeah.
And so she relied on me for that kind of thing.
Wow.
We collaborated, I felt like, very well together.
Yeah. So when it comes to an actor or actress who's not just the lead, but they're also maybe director or producer, it just introduces a whole different level of power dynamic and maybe also complication, like the Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively situation that's unfolding right now. And I'm just, the pendulum is swinging back and forth in regards to public opinion, because that's where it's playing out, where he was the director and the actor.
Yeah.
So he's on set and he's got this vision as to how these intimate scenes are going. And her argument is that he crossed lines during the filming of these scenes. Like he took certain liberties that she was not okay with. That's part of what's happening there. How do you go about working through situations that might have that extra tricky layer of main actors also producer and has a little bit more say than the rest of the actors at set?
Well, specifically when I work with Amy, I would say I need to talk to actor Amy right now.
Okay.
So now I need to talk to you about what you're comfortable with, anything that you might be dealing with that we need to address or not address while we're working. So I need Amy, actor Amy. And so she would go, okay. And then we'd have that conversation. And then I was like, okay, this is producer Amy question. So put on your producer hat while we talk about this. So I tried to draw a very clear line about which Amy I needed. But again, she didn't direct this Kind of Pregnant, but she has a lot of say.
Yeah.
Because she's producer.
Yeah.
And so they went back and forth a lot with, her idea or whatever. But, she just had to have different hats on a regular basis. And I mean, she's so skilled. She's been doing this for how long?
Yeah.
it's not her first rodeo.
Yeah.
So when she sees that something's going to work, she's ready to make it work. And if it's not going to work, it's like, we don't need to dwell on this. It's not going to work. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very interesting to watch because she went in that set like a boss, and I was like
So
in front of both sets,
yeah.
kind of pregnant and life and bath, and I felt empowered by it.
Hmm. Okay, so I want to kind of go back around to um hashtag Me Too.
Mhm.
And maybe like a little bit prior to that. Mhm. Did you find that not certain, just actresses were kind of looking for or crying out for there to be some kind of like guardrails in place prior to like this position actually being established and actually, regarded with respect?
Mhm.
Did you find that?
Not me personally. Um, I mean, it's interesting.
And would you say that the intimacy coordinator really was born from the Me Too movement?
I think it really came to the forefront during that time. Other people were doing it. Uh, some people, I mean, a lot of times it was the wardrobe people, but they were doing just the bare necessity, the basics,
Yeah.
right? For what their skill level was. They weren't talking about like the rehearsal because that's not their job.
Hmm.
Uh, they weren't getting into all of that. Um, but I feel like if I dug, I would find that. But that wasn't necessarily that's not like what drew me into it. It wasn't like I was seeing this from a lot of people. I mean, I've been in the industry for a long time, and I've done one scene on camera, and I've done one drowning scene on camera, and they were both stunts. And the people that I worked with, I never had issues. Like I didn't run into a lot of that stuff personally.
Yeah.
I mean, I ran into, you're small and you're a woman and you can't do things. Yeah, but I didn't
Just
run.
regular, garden
Just
variety massage the
right,
yeah, and therapy. Yep.
exactly, right, which I was used to.
Yeah.
So I didn't have these other things, luckily. So I can't say for me personally, but I think that, yeah, that there were people that had their boundaries crossed a lot and also didn't have the support to take it further or the means to know where to go to say that this happened, and also the comfort to feel like they were going to be supported. And that's part of the job, is that, you know if you're dealing with a really famous director or another actor, to bring some kind of anything against them, right? You feel like there's going to be some reciprocity,
Yeah.
right? And I don't want to lose my job. And then now it's awkward because now they know that I said something, right? So
Well, I mean, like Jack Harvey Weinstein like ran rapid for 30 years.
absolutely,
Like a complete unchecked power.
you don't know what to do. I think when one is in that situation, I mean, just you're exposed and you're vulnerable and you know something wrong is happening, and if you tell, like all of this self doubt that's going to go down, and I'm sure a lot of times it's like, it's just 6 more weeks. I can just get through with 6 more weeks. There's no more sex scenes. I can just grin and bear it so that I can get through this, right? And if the person in power is all like, oh, I can do what I want. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do? How do you go up against that?
Yeah. When hashtag Me Too, the movement really gained momentum. Like I'm talking about like a boulder rolling down a hill kind of thing. The pendulum, like I said, tends to swing really hard in the opposite direction. So what are your thoughts on how things kind of, in terms of the industry, like course corrected as it relates to everything that you were just talking about, just at one point, the abuse of power and that sort of thing. And then men were terrified, and a lot of people lost their careers, probably, for good reason. If you're a fucking predator, then you fucking suck and you should lose everything. But there was a couple that, the accusations were leveled against them. And it was like, wait, hold on one second here. That that shouldn't be included in the grand scheme of this story. Like one of the accusations that comes to mind is Aziz Ansari. Oh, yeah, remember that?
I do.
And it was just to sum up the story, it was this girl, and she gave a whole, interview to this magazine. And I believe that there was so much backlash as a result of it that was their first and last issue. I think the magazine was called Beast or something like that. I can't even remember. Don't get me lie. But in it, she just describes what a lot of women read this and said, "Girl, that was a bad date. That don't you can't not absolve yourself of responsibility and accountability in a situation like that where you are making an accusation that can level this man's career. Like, come on. Do not align yourself with the lionesses that actually have, been through things and have it took an enormous amount of fortitude and courage to come forward. Don't align yourselves with them and hide under their tails. That's not fair. It ruins the moment and the movement for everybody. So
Yeah.
it was such a pendulum swing in the opposite direction. I'm just wondering, like, as being an insider, have you seen, like, what your thoughts on, like, the course correction has been?
Um, well, I think there's still a lot of uh, power dynamics that are not addressed, that aren't necessarily having to do with harassment. Um, in terms of the course correct for any kind of like simulated sex and nudity, what I feel like a lot of people are like, uh, and it's usually men, and I don't feel like it always has to be men, but they'll come in like, I ain't done nothing. I ain't touching nobody. I said, we haven't even talked about anything yet. And they're all like, oh, I had a story about that. I don't need the lawsuit. They're already starting with that kind of thing. Yeah, right. And
I think that's a good place to start. I think it's a great place to start.
um, I don't know. I don't know if I agree. I kind of feel like a great place to start is let's talk about what we're gonna do.
That too, and
That going on all this, I feel like it borders on like defensive. Like it does that they're already like, right? You're that this isn't a conversation, not even a hubbub.
you're right, and it does, but I mean, what that addresses is that you, meeting the man saying this, you might need a little bit more education as to how layered consent, the concept of consent actually is. And if you start to understand how layered the concept of it is, then you won't approach it with so much defensiveness.
Right.
And you
Or
might
the
actually
power
understand.
dynamic,
What's that?
right? Or the power
Or the
dynamic,
power
right?
dynamic,
Because people
exactly.
don't understand.
They don't understand what the power dynamic is. And if that person that's coming in and doing all that is the star, right? That already puts
It sets the tone, and it's negative,
right.
and it's intimidating.
Right.
It's all the things.
Right. It's
Yeah.
all of those things that this role is there to kind of protect. But that person's already walked into the room and started all of that thinking that they're breaking the ice.
Yeah, a little bit of sensitivity training might actually go a long way too here.
For so many people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So for so many of people with humans with penises. So
Real or otherwise.
I was exactly. So I was thinking to myself when you were saying that, another personal story. I just in my last season I interviewed the rapper and entrepreneur Jadakiss. And
I love that one.
oh,
I did. I watched.
oh, thank you. We were so excited to get Jada, and one of the main reasons is because we go back really far.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
his video "Knock Yourself Out" kind of made me a star.
Yeah.
And one of the things that happened on set, which was so interesting, obviously no intimacy porn. Oh no, use a video set. I mean, and 2001. Yeah, that's a little. But there was a scene that takes place outside by the car, and it's an intimate scene, and everybody from the director to producer was encouraging me. So it'd be really great if you, like, kissed him and da da da. And I was like, I don't know him, and I have a man, and this is a music video. It's not even a fucking moves. Okay, so I'm gonna go with no. You know what I'm saying? So I did say I didn't even say this to them because obviously, I'm trying not to be a hard ass and try not to be difficult because it's so easy for a woman to get a label of being difficult.
Right.
And I want to be seen as, somebody who's a team player and whatnot. But what happened, you just confronted with so much when you think that way. Like, I want to be a team player, but, what do I do when people try to take advantage of that? So I went into the scene and me and Jaya were standing together and I said, listen, um, I am here to make your video look amazing. Okay. And they would like me to kiss you, and I'm really, really like not comfortable with that. So would you be able to keep your hands like above my waist and let me kind of guide the scene? And he was like, I wasn't gonna touch you, I promise. You just go ahead. And I was just like, thanks. Like, that's really sweet. It wasn't in the defensive tone. He really truly had no intention of taking advantage of the intimacy of that scene.
Right.
He just was a really decent, cool guy, a gentleman, even back then. And I've always sung his praises because 9.8 times out of 10, a guy in his position would not have done that, would not have had that same reaction. And this is to take advantage. He would have taken advantage, or if I tried to say that kind of thing, he would have been like, bitch, always like that. It would, exactly, it would have completely different. So I've always been really grateful that Jadakiss was a decent human being.
But kudos to you, for one, for standing up for yourself in that environment and the other environments in which you thrive.
Yeah.
But to say specifically, this is what they're asking me to do, and I don't feel comfortable with it,
Yeah.
right? You held your own boundaries. So many people cannot do that. And how old were you then?
I was like 21 or 22. Baby, yeah. I still don't know how I did that. Because
mean,
trust
that's
me, boundaries are a new
huge.
concept to this girl
Yeah.
right here, okay? And that is the therapy.
Bits. So I say hats off to you for holding your own, speaking on it, and giving specifics.
Yeah.
This is where your hands go. That can't, and if you're a small waisted person and a large breasted and large hipped or anything, you move those hands a little bit and you're into other territories. Yes, right? So you need to stay, you gave the direction.
Yeah.
You can move to here or you can come back here, whatever it is. That is huge. And I think that you should pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? So, just random question. What's the craziest place that you've ever had to curate an intimacy scene? Like something that was just like, okay, how are we going to do this? Like balancing act, like,
Yeah, there's a lot of like kitchen counter sex.
that's easy.
Up against a wall.
I mean, nothing so crazy that it was like a balancing act. Oh, I did. This Much I Know Is True, I think was the name of that show at HBO. We did have to shoot an erect penis. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't necessarily a balancing kind of thing. And again, it was a prosthetic. Yeah. Nothing so crazy. Everything's been either, on the counter or up against the wall or in the bed or,
Yeah.
on a floor, like wanting to be having come off the floor and then landed on the floor and then the camera's on the other side of the bed so they see the person's on the floor. Nothing really crazy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I stalked your Instagram page a little bit before this interview, and one thing that really stuck out was your advocacy during the writer's strike. That was a really, really interesting. That was a really interesting time and well overdue because I remember the writer's strike back in 2008, and that one was brutal. I mean, so many shows were off the air. So many people lost hope. They lost so much.
Yeah.
It was a really, really dark time because it also intersected with the housing crisis. We were thrown into a recession. It was some brutal dark time. So and there was a pending SAG strike at the time, but it didn't happen. This time, SAG and WGA, they banded together. So what was it like during that time, like being on the front lines as an advocate um, for your fellow, thespians? And
It felt good,
Mhm.
honestly. And On the jobs that I have with Raising Kanan and Ghost, or that I had, those seasons are done, the writers were integral. I had not seen that before. I'm always the writers somewhere else, and I don't know if that was kind of a COVID thing, so that they could kind of be afar and listening to make sure their words are being said right. But Ghost and Kanan had the writers there on the set, and I just thought that was great because they were just watching it in real time, and if they needed to make adjustments, they could be right there to make the adjustments. And I got to meet some amazing women of color writers that I was just so thrilled to be around. Um, and then, you know, I'm embarrassed to say that in 2008, it didn't really sink in for me, the importance of the writers. Which that's just an ignorance on my.
A lot of people kind of felt it that way too. Yeah, there might have been just like a real division between, the writer's room and then everybody else on set. Again, though, the importance really just kind of wasn't understood because they don't have like the big flashy role like the director, the producer, and DP, and
And so then once I started to know writers, it felt like they absolutely deserve this support because we're nowhere without them. You can't do any of it without any of the pieces, right? But you really have to have a good script. You have to have that. So I just felt it was right. Honestly, I just felt like it was the right thing to do.
Okay, well, Nicole, I could just sit here and talk to you forever and ever and ever, but you have answered so many of the questions I had for so long. Like, I do watching some and like, I have questions. I have. Next time, yes.
Nicole, I have a couple questions.
No, it's gonna happen. Trust me. Okay, you're gonna be mad you gave me your phone number, girl. Okay, so we always kind of wrap up the episodes with a little bit of, you guessed it, rapid fire. So we're just gonna ask you a couple of questions and just instinctively, if you choose one or the other, okay? Okay. All right, just a few. Okay. Stunt coordination or intimacy coordination?
Oh,
Stunt. Okay. In terms of working on it, series or movie?
series.
Okay. Weapons or hand-to-hand combat?
Ooh, hand to hand.
Broadway or film?
Film.
80s R&B or yacht rock?
Oh, 80s R&B.
Right. Woman after my own heart. Nicole Candler, intimacy coordinator, stunt coordinator, actress, mother, yogi, White. Thank you for joining me. I am so happy to have had you, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This was very, very exciting for me. You guys stay tuned for the rest of the season. Season 2 is just going to be lit, and I'm so glad that you guys are going to be joining me. Until then, take care. Thank you for tuning into Hot and Bothered with Melyssa Ford. Please rate, subscribe, and comment, and share wherever you get your favorite podcasts. This season of Hot and Bothered with Melyssa Ford is hosted, written, and executive produced by me for Forged Path Productions. This episode was written and produced by Sebastian Godin. Filming and editing of this episode is done by GVI Films and executive produced by Rachel DeSalvo.